When you learn about someone, it's after they've already gone through all the failures. You didn't see however many years of toiling before that. The easiest way to think about it for me is, am I tired of this or is the audience tired of this?
They're not the same thing, are they?
No. Doing that prop stuff, it just reminds me of like a Pee-wee's Playhouse vibe, where it's like I'm this like weird math Mary Poppins, like pulling props out of my magic purse, basically.
I've worked with a lot of people in different capacities over the years, and it is much easier to work with somebody who is good at one thing than somebody who is good at 7 things. There simply are too many options. But that's how this stuff works. You do things that you think are good, and then you just kind of relax and see how it plays out. And then the worst thing that's happened is you had a nice time at a museum exhibit.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. We're going to talk a little bit about Vsauce2 stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming schedule here for the Create Unknown. And to do that with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, we've got good news and bad news. Which one, Kevin, which one do we want to do first?
Bad news. Let's just pull off the
Bad
Band-Aid.
news?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rip it.
Okay. The bad news is that one of our coworkers has died.
What?
Bob Saget's podcast was on the Studio 71 network. So we have to consider him a coworker and a peer. And this week we lost Bob Saget, didn't we?
Oh, that's right. Yes. And I loved Full House. Unabashedly, just watched Full House. It was such a part of my childhood growing up and in syndication, watching those stupid but like somehow addictively entertaining episodes over and over and over again. And then it was such a revelation to find out like later in life that the beacon of kind of wholesomeness as a child, Bob Saget, Danny Tanner, was actually an incredibly raunchy and like dark humored, depraved comedian. That was so funny to learn later in life.
Well, I suppose the house is a little less full today, isn't it? And I bet there are Twitter threads where there are like suburban moms writing these tributes. It's like poetry that's like, describing the empty bedroom and the full house. These maudlin Bob Saget tributes. They must exist.
But meanwhile, conversely, there are probably some people with six senses of humor making like horrible jokes about it. And that's actually where Bob Saget liked to play. Is in, like the Aristocrats. Like if you've never seen that documentary, The Aristocrats.
I remember him in that.
Yeah. Give that a spin if you want to, have your eyes opened a little bit about Bob Saget's nature. That
was one of the best parts, if not the best part of that documentary.
The best part. Yeah. And his roast was great. We talked about Norm Macdonald earlier in the year, and that was Bob Saget's roast that Norm did all of those absolutely horrendous jokes out of that old-timey joke book. So yeah, man, Bob Saget was great. He was great. And he will be missed. And yes, I forgot that he was on the Studio 71 network and in the family along with us. So we were part of his Full House, later on in life, which is kind of strange.
That's right. We lived under the stairs like Harry Potter did.
Yeah.
We got locked in there with a couple of microphones.
I know. He didn't even know we were down there.
That's the thing. Bob Saget is looking down on us now, listening to this, thinking, who are these people and how did any of this happen?
Yeah,
he knew nothing about it.
I will say that when we did notice that he was on the same network as us, there was a long shot dream of mine that we would have him on TCU. Obviously, that won't be possible now, but obviously, best wishes and stuff to his friends and family, because it came as a shock. It's not like he was sick or anything. No, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't
elderly by any means.
Maybe that's our pitch now. When there's somebody who we don't have a personal connection to, you can't shoot him a Twitter DM and ask. It's a cold call. Maybe that's our pitch is, look, we want you on this show before you surprisingly die.
Yeah, look, you can drop dead any moment, and we need to record your brilliant insights into, being a creator before that occurs. So you better fill out our booking form right now. But look,
well, yeah, so that was the bad news for the week. I just wanted to acknowledge that, because we've talked about him in several different ways. I remember when you went through the whole thing about America's Funniest Videos being a significant shift, like the precursor to YouTube kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he's come up a few times, and when that news dropped, yeah, like you said, it was out of nowhere, and it was like, well, that sucks all around.
Yeah, it does. Right after Betty White as well, we just had in a Vsauce2 video. I mean, not literally,
the
but
comments, yeah, the comments are still rolling in. Where now people see the picture and it's just like floods of R.I.P. Betty comments.
Yeah, but
we do have good news.
Oh, okay. What's the good news?
We have a lot of good news.
Put the Band-Aid back on.
We have a lot of good news, and it's the upcoming schedule. We are on Tuesdays for all of these, but we can tell you right now, the next five episodes of The Create Unknown, and it will be 5 interview formats with guests. Next Tuesday, the 18th, is Brendan Caulfield, who did the music for Smiling Friends. And I'm excited for that, because the process of making music that fits somebody else's thing is pretty unique.
Oh, yeah. As well as the music for YOLO Crystal Fantasy, Michael Cusack's other Cartoon Network show. So, they're longtime collaborators, and yeah, it will be great. I have so many questions about the Smiling Friends little ditties that are in there, as well as, just the general music. So that will be awesome.
Well, if Brendan doesn't answer those on January 18th, then you can ask Psychic Pebbles and Michael Cusack on the 25th as they come in to talk about Smiling Friends.
Yeah, no, this is no surprise. This was a long time coming. It was just a matter of when is Smiling Friends going to come out, and then we can have you guys on the show to talk about it. So Smiling Friends has come out. It's all out. It dropped earlier this month in full, the whole season 1. So as soon as that occurred, I talked to Zach. We got him on the schedule. And the 25th, him and Michael will join us.
Yes. And the 3 weeks after that, we have Gabriel Brown on February 1st. Then I Did a Thing is on the 8th. And Alternate History Hub has rescheduled to February 15th. That's really a Valentine's Day date, isn't it? It's pretty close.
Yeah, we'll come up with what ifs surrounding love, Valentine's Day.
He may be surprised to learn that we're considering this a Valentine's date, but that'll just add to the fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so to reiterate, the next 5, we've got Brendan Caulfield, Pebbles and Cusack, Gabriel Brown, I Did a Thing, and Alternate History Hub. And there are a couple more that we were talking about this morning that we're sorting bookings out. So we're really rolling here through into March with a pretty good lineup.
Yeah. I'm really excited for everybody. I think it's a varied lineup. It's creators who kind of all do different things aside from the 2 straight weeks of Smiling Friends stuff, which I'm
different angles on Smiling Friends. So I mean, completely different. Yeah,
because especially, talking to Brendan next week, I just want to know what it's like, that process of making music for a show. We've never had the opportunity to speak with somebody who does that. So that will be really, really awesome. And I know that the people who make music, who listen to the show, are going to be excited for that one. But today, we're going to do a little Vsauce2 talk, because we have yet to actually discuss the format change that happened on the channel, why the switch, why we're excited about it, and that sort of thing. Because I think to some people it seems like a major shift. To us, it really kind of seems like a tweak, like a little turn of a dial, rather than a U-turn or anything like that.
Yeah, and I do think that it's really broadly applicable to the projects that everybody else does. Like when we talk about a switch, it's not like one day it's like, okay, let's just make a completely different video and Monday that's out. No, it really has been at least, well, would you say a 6-month process? Is that about right? Where, it had to be a long-term plan kind of thing. And that's the way this stuff evolves. There's a mix of immediate and short term and weathering the storm from the changes and then coming out on the other end of it. And that's kind of what happens with whatever projects you do. So we do talk about things like evolving content and art over time, but this is an example of how it actually happens. And there were a couple bumps to get there. And that's very realistic. We talk to people about their tremendous successes and it sounds really clean almost all the time. It's like I did something cool and people liked it. And so now I'm a success. Well, that's the one-line version. Yeah, it's quite a bit bumpier. And this is a great opportunity to hit those pieces.
I'm glad that you said that because that's such a big thing for me. And I don't know what this concept or this term is. Maybe there should be one. Maybe we'll have to make it up. But for the most part, when you learn about someone, it's after they've already gone through all the failures. They've already gone through all of the hiccups and the missteps and like the bad ideas and the things everybody hated. And now you've heard of them once they have, X number of subscribers or followers or whatever it is, or they have their Netflix special or whatever. Well, you didn't see like however many years of toiling before that. We had Jose Arroyo on, who's an Emmy award-winning comedy writer, talking about just faxing jokes to Jay Leno for how many years, and at 10 years at least, he said, where he wasn't getting paid a dime and was just working on trying to become a joke writer professionally. And nobody sees that. They see the end result and they think, oh, that person is so lucky, or you know what I mean? It's like, well, maybe there certainly is an element of right time and right place to anything, but more often than not, they are some kind of ridiculous workaholic who just never gave up and were persistent through all of that failure and eventually came out on the other side. And now you're seeing what it looks like on the other side. And that success is like the thing that is all you see about that person.
Yeah. And the really interesting thing about this process is that from the person making the thing, you usually don't know what's happening until after it's happened. So like that rough patch thing. And when you're in the middle of it, it's not clear exactly what's wrong or why it's, how, like the specific ways that it's rough. Once you're through it, you can look back and say, here's what happened. And that's why we're doing this now, because we've hit the point where we can look back and know in a way that you kind of can't know when you're in the middle of it. If you're doing something new and the audience is adjusting to it and there are positive comments and there are negative comments, you got to have some time for that to settle, to find out what really matters, to see what it all adds up to. And you've got to have some distance and perspective on that kind of thing. And I liken this to when you write something. When you write it, it seems very good because that's the thought you just had. I mean, of course it's good. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't look at it for a few days and then you come back, you'd be like, all right, well, that's a dumb word. That's right. A sentence that doesn't need to be there. Like this paragraph is twice as long as it needs to be. This tangent shouldn't be a part of it. Or, wow, I skipped over this whole thing and it really needs to have a page all on its own. Mm-hmm. You don't notice that. You don't have a clear perspective until you have distance. And we finally have enough distance from this format switch to look back at the beginning of it and have a sense of what happened.
Yeah, and I just wanted to shout out a creator real quick because, there's this 10-year challenge thing going around, this trending thing where you show a photograph of yourself from 10 years ago and then one now, and you put them side by side, and you're like, wow, look at how old I am now or whatever. There's a creator who does cosplay, and I don't know how to pronounce the name of it. It's KMUI, Cami. I don't know, but it's this couple, Svetlana and Benny, and they do the most ridiculous cosplay you will ever see. They spend an insane amount of time custom crafting every bit of whatever like video game armor or whatever it is that they're cosplaying, they're creating. Anyway, Svetlana, like during this 10-year challenge thing, recently posted a side-by-side comparison of a cosplay that she did. I actually think it was more than 10 years ago. If I'm remembering it correctly, it was 2003. So we're talking nearly 20 years ago.
20, yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it was 2013. But anyway, regardless, the point is that cosplay she did was very basic. It was cute. I'm sure she was extremely happy with it and proud of herself at the time. But when you're sticking this thing side by side with the stuff she's doing today, which she's famous for today, it's night and day. You wouldn't even think it was the same person. You're like, wait, what? You know, it's like seeing some sort of master painter, and then like 20 years ago, all they could do was stick figure drawings. And you're like, what? How is that? How does that make sense? Couldn't you always be amazing and perfect? And the answer is no. No, you couldn't always be amazing and perfect. Nothing works like that. So
no. Well, I want to know. I'm actually curious to know this myself. But anybody listening definitely doesn't know because they're not you. What was the very, very beginning of a content switch, of changing things up? When did you begin to think something has to be in a different style here?
There's a lot that goes into it because I've done it so many times over the years. Changed formats and changed content and created new shows and kind of shelved other shows. The easiest way to think about it for me is you know, am I tired of this, or is the audience tired of this?
They're not the same thing, are they?
No, they're not the same thing, but they're both equally valid ways of thinking about the stuff that you're making. Because no matter what you're making and no matter how popular it is at one time, that popularity fades. Like, I don't care what you're doing, you know? Like, one of the only things, I was thinking about this recently, that has stood the test of time for some reason, and I'd love to get either Lloyd or Peter on the show, is epic rap battles of history is still popular. Like, they still, and maybe it's because they release them so infrequently that
it's an event when one comes out. Yeah.
Right. You have time to forget about it, and then it comes back and you're like, oh, this is, and the quality is still so ridiculously good. The writing and everything is, you know, genius, that it stands the test of time. But look, most things aren't epic rap battles of history. Most things in year 4, let alone year 9, people are like, yeah, I liked that. I like other things now. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how human nature is.
Yeah, it's like music or fashion where things change subtly. You know, it's not, there's not, like, you think of what people are wearing. There's not a tremendous shift between 2020 and now, but there are a bunch of little subtle shifts. You know, some brands aren't everywhere the way they were then. You know, I think of things like I see fewer tweets of people wearing Supreme shirts. I'm not saying that Supreme has fallen off. It's not that, but it's just occupies a subtly different place than it probably does, you know, today. You know, it did a few years ago. It was, you know, I think of Rice Gum, like trying to get Supreme drops years ago, and, you know, dunking on people waiting in line for shirts and stuff. But yeah, like it's a slow evolution like that. And so there's a math proof that's made the rounds for decades. It shows how 1 equals 2. You start with a times b equals a squared, and 7 steps later you've got 1 equals 2. Well, on the surface, the whole progression is pretty compelling, but there is a subtle flaw in the process, and you really only see that problem when you've actually done it yourself. This is the kind of interactive experience that Brilliant.org provides in its courses. It's not some YouTuber telling you about a thing, it's you doing the thing in a very well-structured way. Hit the number theory course or the physics of the everyday. Pop into vector calculus or cryptocurrency. There is a ton to choose from. I like the math history course because it's got a bit of math and it's got a bit of the humanities. I like the stories behind the numbers. Scan over what they've got and something is going to grab you. You can get started learning on Brilliant for free, and the first 200 people to sign up through brilliant.org/createunknown will also get 20% off an annual premium membership. Click it, check out the options, and get started, because that's free. And if you want to go premium, 20% off with brilliant.org/createunknown. It's a new year. Start learning something. Start mastering something. We talk about make something mean something. Do that in your mind with Brilliant. Brilliant.org/createunknown. Links down below. In this case, with you, did you feel like it was you or the audience who needed something different?
I think this was the rare instance in which it felt like a little bit of both. Yeah, it did feel like a little bit of both. One thing that I'll say that I didn't realize, it took me a long time to realize when it comes to the type of content that we were producing on Vsauce2, is that when you make content specifically about conceptual ideas that are intrinsically confusing, it's going to confuse a lot of people, and they're not going to like that, you know? Like,
only a portion of people like it. You know, and the portion of people who like it really love it. Those are people like, look, there are people who enjoy doing crossword puzzles and people who hate it.
Right.
And the percentage of people who like crossword puzzles is very small. Now, they're extremely loyal. Like, I have known people who a routine part of their life is like the first thing they do is grab coffee and hit the New York Times crossword puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but what percentage of people is that? I don't know, point something. And you gotta do a little better than that. You gotta interest a few more people. So I think that was a good observation, that churning problems all the time is tough to sustain for more than a real tight niche.
Yeah. And when it really hit me was actually there was a comment that I think was posted on the Vsauce2 Reddit. So you could probably just go there and look at it right now, if I'm remembering correctly. And it was something along the lines of essentially like, hey, Kevin, I used to really hate you, and your videos were annoying to me because I always thought you were, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is how I remember it. I thought you were wrong all the time and I didn't understand what you were talking about. But now I get it and I really like your videos. Well, how many people just stayed with like part one of that story with it, which is, this is too confusing. You're annoying. You don't explain it well enough. I'm out of here. I hate you. It seems like not a lot of people made it to step two, which was coming around and thinking, oh, I actually really like these, and I get these videos now. So I was like, maybe continuing down this path is not only alienating people, but almost like actively, I don't know, like I don't want to make people feel confused or like they don't understand something. That's the opposite of what I've always been interested in, which is really making people excited about things and not frustrated by them.
Yeah, and there's a blend there too, because there's got to be an element of accessibility so that it doesn't feel like a club you have to work to join.
Mm-hmm.
You pay your mental dues to be able to enjoy a YouTube channel. That's something that a couple people are really into and most are not. That's hard. But at the same time, if it's like too easily accessible in the sense that it's not interesting enough, it's not challenging enough, then you've missed in the other direction. And there were a couple videos that hit really interesting, weird questions that probably went too far on, the pendulum swung too far the other way on that, and the toothpaste sandwich video and lightning killing fish and things like that. Like that may have been too far on the other side. So I think that was the question, is how do you hit that balance with content and keep it something that fits with 10 years of a channel?
Well, and here is another really important like structural difference that I see between the paradox videos and the math game videos and these crime analysis videos. And that with the paradox videos and the math game videos, we were always trying to craft a conclusion that essentially summed up and crystallized why this conceptual problem is important and how it relates to your real life. Always.
Yeah, why it mattered. That was the big question, wasn't it? It was,
why does this
okay,
matter?
here's the problem, here's the story, whatever. At the end of it,
Who cares?
How does this, who cares? Who cares? That's exactly it. Yep.
Why did you spend like 8 minutes talking about these envelopes? Who cares? And and I feel like we always did, an admirable enough job at defining why you should care, but the order of operations there is backwards. Okay.
You got to get there, don't you?
You have to slog through the thing that you probably are thinking, why should I bother thinking about this, to get to an answer as to why you should think about it. It's like backwards.
Yep.
So what these crime analysis videos do organically and subconsciously is they start with the who cares. The who cares is baked in because you're telling a story, a real life story that has actual consequences for human beings, and then discussing, an analysis of fingerprints or handwriting or, the probability of people with certain intrinsic attributes committing a crime or not. It's the right structure for talking about these things. And the old structure, I think, was backwards.
Yeah. That old structure is really awesome in certain ways and for certain people. So think about reading a book. You have to have a book be that structure for the most part. It can't be awesome with the big reveal on chapter 3. The hell's the point of that? Like why are you going to read 250 pages when on page 47 the explosion has happened? Like you've got to build up to it, but the ending of something like a book is the big who cares, why does this matter reveal. But when somebody is picking up a book and starting to read it, they've consciously made the decision. They know how thick this book is. They know how fast they read. And it's like, all right, I'm going to devote 12 hours to this. I've made the decision that provided this isn't terrible as I read it, I'm comfortable giving 12 hours to this to get to the end. That's not how YouTube videos tend to work, especially now. Nobody clicks on an 18-minute video thinking, if all goes well, I'm definitely going to get to the end of this. No, they want to watch it. And when they're bored of watching it and they don't want to, they will click any of the 1,000 other things on their screen begging them to be clicked, or they'll just plain leave YouTube. I mean, there's so many options. So that structure, I think it was right to push that back and have a more front-loaded thing where the stakes are obvious, where when it's something like a crime, you have to lead by saying, hey, here's a person who's dead and somebody's in jail for it. Or here's a life-altering case of fraud. Somebody did it. Are they going to pay for that? Are they going to, totally get away with it? Whatever. There's a problem and there's some resolution or non-resolution of that problem. And both of those things matter. And that has to come pretty close to the beginning. So that's just a better fit for 10 minutes of video.
It is, and I think it's a better fit for most people. I think that I always had a hard time sending certain Vsauce2 videos to friends and family because I'm like, are they really going to want to devote, 15 minutes to some conceptual like expected value problem about like 2 boxes that and a genie decides which one has money in it? It's like, I think that's really neat. And we made those videos and a lot of those videos. And I'm proud of those videos, and I think that they were fun to do for sure. You know, one of the things that I really actually miss about those videos that haven't yet been as featured in the crime analysis videos is just coming up with like props and demonstrations and that sort of thing. That was kind of like a neat, weird element to making a video that me being a weirdo, it really enjoyed. Like, okay, how am I going to make some sort of visual representation of Conway's soldiers? Okay, I got to get this cord, and here are some checkers, and I got to, you know, create this grid. And there was like a little bit of, I don't know, like arts and crafts involved. I mean, look, my wife making the balloon Kevin for me to shoot for the Russian roulette video with like the needle dart, like that was just fun. That was just fun.
Yoda puppet was a big one.
Yeah, your Yoda puppet. I think we should mention that was not mine. That was your Yoda puppet that you already had, and it was your idea to have me use it in the video. And people still comment about Yoda dying in that video and how much they enjoyed that because it was so stupid.
I remember when that video got published. That was our question. It's like, are people going to find this Yoda death scene funny, or are they going to unsubscribe by the tens of thousands?
Yeah.
And it seemed like a coin flip.
Oh,
some people hated it. A couple people really hated that.
Yeah.
That scene.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely a coin flip, but it was one of those rare instances where like, yeah, we're going to do something we think is funny and just roll with it and hope that there are other people as stupid as we are that also think this like really way too drawn out death scene of Yoda for losing a game of dots or sprouts is as funny as we think it is. And luckily some people did, but
yeah, the best thing is that my brother had that puppet when it came out, and really, you know, he thought it was awesome, and he would make it talk, and his voice with it is just impeccable. It's so
spot
good. On. Yeah, and it, you know, it's cheaply made, like latex infused with God knows what. So it wasn't built to really age well, you know. And it came out with the prequels, so it's 20 years old, give or take. And so his disintegrated over time. And I managed to get a replacement. And so when that video came out, it was just awesome to send him the link to it. Just be like, you're not going to believe what's in this video.
Yeah, but Matt, one of the funniest things about that is that it's one of the best performing Vsauce2 videos. So many people have seen that. Like, it's not like that was some video that performed poorly. Like that video, let me look it up real quick to see how many views it's at. But I think it's over a couple of 3.5 million. So 3.5 million people have seen that stupid
literally
Yoda death.
Even now, a couple thousand people a day are watching Yoda die.
Yeah. For the foreseeable future as well. It's not going away. It will be, dude, it will be relevant in 35 years. That video on sprouts, like it's not, there's no shelf life. It's evergreen as it comes. So good.
Well, factoring in all this stuff, though, that's really what the discussions were like, figuring out what to do next. You know, talking about all of these elements and what worked and what didn't, but also it's really important you saying that you liked to do certain things. I don't think a lot of people admit that, where they have to choose something that they don't hate doing. And I think there were a bunch of formats, and there continue to be a bunch of formats that would perform really well on the Vsauce2 channel. You don't want to do them. I don't want to help with them for, you know, all sorts of logistical reasons. We don't want to deal with it. So there are a lot of on paper viable options that in reality really suck bad. And you had to go through that process of, what do I want to do that people are going to like, that also makes me want to get up before noon.
That's true. And there's such a wide array, and we're going to, you know, talk to such a wide array of creators coming up who do run that gamut from Caulfield, who makes the music, to, Alternate History Hub, who has animations,
Yeah.
and Gabriel Brown, who does all sorts of impressions and music and singing. So, the options are almost limitless for me. And doing that prop stuff, it just reminds me of like a Pee-wee's Playhouse vibe. That I liked that Pee-wee's Playhouse vibe, where it's like I'm this like weird math Mary Poppins, like pulling props out of my magic purse, basically. Whether it's those those roulette wheels for Perando's Paradox, like figuring that out, or like the homemade dice for Efren's Dice. There are so many examples of that. I just like that, and I hope that we can figure out little places for that to happen again in the crime analysis videos. There is one that will come out next that I did just order some props for, so I am a little excited to get those props tomorrow and start figuring out exactly how I'm going to demonstrate what needs to be demonstrated visually in this next video. But to me, that's kind of like, what does Kevin like to do in his videos at this point? And it is that sort of like visualizing things with kind of cheap objects rather than animation or stock footage or whatever it is that other people use, skits. I don't really do any of that. I like kind of like the toys element of it, which I don't think a lot of other people really do.
No. And the other thing that you seem to have a real intense interest in is the human understanding element of a topic. And that goes back to all the videos that were, specifically about understanding the human experience, really. That combined with that quirky proppiness and good stories and things that fit you. And I wanted to say this when we were talking about options. I've worked with a lot of people in different capacities over the years, and it is much easier to work with somebody who is good at one thing than somebody who is good at 7 things. There simply are too many options. It's when there's like a buffet of talent. And for both better and worse, Kevin, you can do a lot of things. If, I don't know, let's say your talent was like juggling. Okay, you have a YouTube channel where you juggle different things and make compelling juggling content. At no point does it come up that you would do something else because you are a juggler. End of story. It's harder when you have a lot to choose from. You can do a lot of things and have just a really broad skill set. What do they say? Talent stack now? Is that the term? I don't know. But it meant that kind of anything is on the table. So each idea, we would talk about that. It's like, all right, here's the good parts about this, the bad parts, the things that are a pain in the ass, the things that are exciting to do. And that analysis is really hard. It takes a lot of time to sift through and think about all of those options. The way you just detailed the element of having a demo in a fun way that really nobody else could do. Well, how do you keep parts of that and attach it to a new idea and still have it fit? That's really tough. It's hard. And a lot of the people in the Discord, we see them talk every day and they talk about the things they do. Most of the people in this community are a lot closer to you than my fake juggler example, where they're competent in several areas. They're talented in several areas. And I think it's hard for them to sort out what they do best and how to put all those pieces together.
Yeah, I do want to outline
I know it's
something.
weird for you to talk about because we're talking about you being amazing at 7 things. But I think you've got to agree that it's a real force in the creative process. Baseweight says right now in chat, this is him with genres of music. Well, yeah, Baseweight, it would be a whole lot easier if you played the lap steel in a country band. Your options would be somewhat limited if you played the dobro on every song. No, it would probably cut out, say, the rap genre from possibilities. You wouldn't have much of a classical music presence. Yeah, your options would be limited, and it would be a lot easier in that respect.
But you might get a job as the lap steel guy for the people who need one. So that, there are certainly tremendous benefits to that as well. I wanted to say real quick, as far as the difference between doing the thing that you really like and doing the thing that the audience really likes, that was completely on the table with those weird questions videos, because like a question like, can a toothpaste sandwich, that's like a tongue twister. Can a toothpaste sandwich brush your teeth? I loved that question. I thought that was fascinating. I loved the idea of taking such a stupid question way too seriously and actually learning about like how toothpaste works and how people have cleaned their teeth over the centuries. I like that. And that's probably an example, Matt, of me being interested in too many things, because that does really interest me. And it turned out it didn't really interest a whole lot of other people. Like
Not enough, no.
Yeah. I was kind of shocked that video didn't do very well, because to me, it was like, it's just fascinating. Like, wow, I never thought about a toothpaste sandwich. And it turns out that if you do eat a toothpaste sandwich, there are elements of it that will brush your teeth, depending on, the bread is toasted or whatever. You have to watch the video to kind of get the full, explanation. But nobody really wanted to know the answer to that question, I guess, except me and a handful of people.
I think there's a little bit of nuance to that, because I think that that video would have done extremely well on a different channel. But you're in this position where content can be good that subscribers to a channel are not expecting or not into in the same way. So there are a lot of channels that do extremely well with videos like this toothpaste sandwich thing. I don't know how much of that was this isn't as good a video topic as you thought it was, versus it's not as good a video topic for the Vsauce2 YouTube channel as you thought it was. And that mismatch it's a very real thing to consider, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know what's too far with your audience. And this is an example way before our time, but the classic moment of somebody doing this is Bob Dylan going with an electric guitar. That was a momentous shift to the people who loved Bob Dylan for his super easy folk music, just acoustic storytelling type. When he plugs in an electric guitar, everything changes there. Is the audience along for that ride? Because an electric guitar is amazing for, the rock genre at that time. It's not like it was weird to people. It was weird to some people because Bob Dylan did it.
Mm-hmm.
He did okay. It didn't kill his career. It changed the trajectory a little bit. His music was a little bit different. He had some more options after that. But that was the big question, is how does this fit with the people who are signed up to you to expect a certain thing?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think there are better ways to do the toothpaste sandwich idea. I think that I Did a Thing, who we're having on the podcast in a few weeks, could probably make a great toothpaste sandwich video where, it's an experiment, essentially. He maybe eats toothpaste sandwiches for a month. I don't know what the experiment is. I'm not the experiment guy. I'm not an engineer. But I could see that. I could see, a Michael Reeves type mad scientist doing some kind of toothpaste sandwich video that everybody really likes and is very funny, and can still hit, whatever scientific elements are most interesting to people. But yeah, for me to just talk about that didn't really work. So it turns out that going to the crime stuff is working. The response to it, people don't really get to they really don't get to see this at all now that dislikes are hidden and turned off. But when you put out a video as a YouTube creator, on the back end, you can see a likes to dislikes ratio. It's one of the most prominent data points that they give you for essentially like the health of a video, how a video is doing. You have basically the view count and the likes dislikes ratio, and how many comments it has. So anyway, but that's how they present it on the back end, as a percentage rather than just it has like X amount of likes and Y amount of dislikes. The likes dislikes ratio on the crime analysis videos are as high as any videos on Vsauce2. So that was one of the first metrics that really screamed to me. And that started right out of the gate with the Making a Math Murderer video, which is the story of Sally Clark. The likes, dislikes on that were over 99%, I think.
Yeah, it's like 99.2. And I mean, a good video is going to be, well, good. I mean, a video that's well received by the people watching it is probably going to be low 90s.
Right.
Which numerically, like, what is that? I don't know, of the 15 or 16 people who weigh in on a thing, one of them dislikes. That's a pretty good ratio. But what you're talking about is one person out of 50 giving it a thumbs down.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty strong endorsement. And that video did bang out. I mean, I remember the opening day. Yeah, it was like 99.4. I'm like, okay, well, even if the stats don't go crazy on this, which they didn't at all,
mm-hmm.
It's clear that the people who are watching this right now, they do like what they're seeing. And that's important to believe is true when you see one good number like likes ratio, and then a number that really matters like views being not great.
Yeah, but you also just kind of, I mean, at least, I certainly got this sense, and I believe that you did as well, that even in those kind of early days of seeing, the response, because it is a switch, you don't know how many people are going to like this sort of documentary style storytelling, mm-hmm. as opposed to, math analysis strictly. But there was a gut feeling like, I really believe in this. I feel like this will work over time, and it's going to take time for, people to drop off who aren't interested in it. It's going to take time for new people to come in who are unfamiliar with the channel, or maybe wrote it off as something they weren't interested in the past, to say, hey, I actually like what, these videos are now.
Yeah.
But that's a process that you kind of have to feel almost intangibly that you're willing to ride out, essentially. And it's been five of those videos now, and the fifth one
is it 5 or 6?
I think it's 5. Sally Clark, Brandon Mayfield, Hetty Green, Joyce Ann Brown, and then the Collinses.
Yeah, you're right. The one that we're working on now will be the 6th.
Will be the 6th. But it wasn't until this 5th one, the most recent one, where the algorithm kind of started to play nice with it, and now it's getting picked up, and a lot of new people are coming in. So, and that was about 4 months, right?
4
3
or 5?
Yeah, 4 or 5 months.
There was a period of time. I mean, I'm thinking in a couple ways, like how long has that video been out? But there's a time where you made the decision to go in that direction, and then it's like, okay, well, we have a completely new process here. We have to figure out how to do this and then actually make that video. So the lead time on that first one was quite a bit longer than normal. Do you remember how you settled on doing this type? Because I actually don't. I don't remember how you decided to pull the trigger on this genre.
Well, I think that it was, I think it was something that you had been reading about, and you suggested it to me. And I had just gotten to the point with, like I said earlier, with the conceptual math videos, where I had been getting frustrated essentially by the response to them. Because, like, for example, a video that I always wanted to make is explaining that not everything is 50-50. That's a video that I never ended up making, but maybe still will.
That'll be your last video.
That'll be my last video.
When that video comes out, that's when everybody will know Vsauce2 and Kevin are done on YouTube.
I'm over it.
Because half of that video is going to be just dropping a nuke on 10 years of commenters.
Just a screed about how probability works. But oh man, there's been so many probability videos. You know, that was like really kind of like the main thing for the last 3 years on Vsauce2 was probability. And I just got so tired of people thinking that everything is 50-50. It either happens or it doesn't. Therefore, it's 50-50. And, you know, I didn't have the time or the patience to try to explain why that's wrong as a reply to a tweet or a comment. So I thought to myself,
time-consuming. Yeah.
You know, maybe this should be an entire video actually explaining why people think everything is 50-50, why it's not, why not everything is not always 50-50, what the difference is between like probabilistic outcome and results. You know, those are two different things that get conflated. But yeah, ultimately it was like, what can we do on Vsauce2 that's less confusing to people, quite honestly? And
more of a story too, story-based as opposed to problem-based.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is talking about people is something that I've always been interested in, going back to Mindblow and BDP. Like those were about people and people doing amazing things or things happening to people. And I kind of got away from that for a while, not really talking about people and just talking about concepts. So that's certainly another element of it that was nice and was attractive to me, to be like, oh, okay, here's a story of a person who went through hardship because of misunderstanding. And definitely that was my frustration with probably years of misunderstanding had a lot to do with me being attracted to telling stories of misunderstandings ruining people's lives.
Yeah, with serious consequences.
Horrible consequences. So I think the Sally Clark one, I don't know where or how you came across her story, but you definitely told that to me and said, you know, what do you think about this? And I was completely unfamiliar with that. I was and have been completely unfamiliar going into every one of these videos. So it's been just as interesting to me to learn about what has happened to these people as it is to, I'm sure, the people watching the videos for the first time.
Most of the video topics and the ones that we're considering for the future, I can't think of any that I would describe as being in the public consciousness. If they were, it was very brief. So like Brandon Mayfield getting tagged by the FBI for the Madrid bombing. Yeah, that was hot for like 1 week in 2002 or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure that it was really on my radar then, for example, but then it's not, because it's news, and news never stops, and it's always new. Mm-hmm. It's literally part of the word. So it's constantly replaced by other things, and it's got to be like OJ level, you know, stupendous in terms of scale for it to stick out as being a thing to most people. And so a terrible thing that happens to somebody like Sally Clark or Brandon Mayfield or whatever, you know, once it's resolved, you're like, wow, that was crazy. And then you really move on to the next thing. So going back and looking at the mechanisms of why those events played out the way they did, that's a cool way to play it. I mean, that's interesting stuff, and it's fresh to everybody because, again, they're not familiar with a lot of these, and there are so many of them. If any of these video topics were like the one injustice that happened in a 5-year period, then yes, I'm sure it would stick out. But it's constant. There's unfortunately no shortage of nutty trials and court cases and convictions. I mean, you could probably, if you had all the information, which it's tough to find because they're almost all local to some degree, and you can't keep up with what's, you know, happening in Paducah. If you had the info, though, and a team of like 50 people.
Where is Paducah?
Yeah.
Is that real? Is that a real place?
Yeah, it's in the Midwest.
Oh,
I want
okay.
to say Kansas or Kentucky,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, Kentucky. All right, good. I I got it on the second try. Let's say you had a team of 50 people and they were just like tracking the news to find crazy injustices that somehow involved numbers or logic, anything like that. I bet you could do 5 videos a week. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you had the resource to do it, you could do 300 a year and not even touch all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no shortage. They're good stories, they're compelling, and they're important because, as you point out in a couple of those videos, these things keep happening.
Yeah.
Even though we know exactly what the problem is, they keep happening, and the odds are like a math mistake, a statistical mistake, presenting something as just being very different than what that mathematical reality actually indicates is almost certain to be happening this second somewhere in the US.
Yeah.
Like there's a courtroom right now that is getting bombarded with bullshit probability. This is guaranteed to be happening this second.
Yeah. Well, and I will also say real quickly that the other thing that interests me about learning about these cases is thinking about them differently than they're presented, differently than they've been recorded or talked about before.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, yes, you read about this story, but let's put it in the context of how about with like Hetty Green's signature analysis? All right, that's what happened. These are the facts. Well, let's think about how hard it is to replicate your own signature. Is that an easy thing to do? Is it a hard thing? How hard is it? How easy is it? Let's do a little experiment and and you know, run the numbers and look. That to me is really interesting because it's not just, oh yeah, here's this story and I'm going to retell it to you because you haven't heard it before. It's, you know, here's this story, but then let's also think about some aspect of it in under a new light or in a new way, or play with it a little bit, or yeah, bring in some kind of concepts that have been talked about in past Vsauce2 videos,
Yes.
you know, whether it's like the Einstein effect or mimetic culture. I don't know, whatever it is. Like there are a lot of concepts that have been detailed on Vsauce2 that now get to be kind of pulled out of the back catalog and say, hey, you know, I talked about this 5 years ago. Here it is. This is it. In reality, it's playing out right before your eyes. That thing that was a concept, here it is, plain as day, and what it did to people. That is actually really interesting to me too, because like nobody is talking about these stories and referencing Dunbar's number. Like that will never happen.
No, they aren't.
It's impossible, but it can happen in these videos.
Yeah. It can happen in these videos because your approach is a lot different. And number two, you have a body of work that builds to it. And nobody else can go back in time 5 years and make those videos. Like they have them or they don't, and they don't have them because they were just doing different stuff then. So there's a scaffolding aspect that you can get away with that would be tough for other people. But I want to point to a couple comments in the episode chat here because they're directly related to what we're talking about. One of them is from Chinchilla, asking whether crime stuff is sustainable because YouTube is cracking down on that kind of content. And he has a comment here that it's got 43,000 likes, saying flagged videos violate violence and sensitive events guidelines of the YouTube terms of service. That makes a difference. In that very first video about Sally Clark, that got demonetized. And if I had to, or limited monetization, if I had to estimate how much AdSense revenue did not get made from that video, I would put it in terms of saying enough to make 3 more videos. That's how much Vsauce2 missed out on because apparently YouTube gets skittish when you start talking about murdered babies.
Apparently.
They don't like that.
No.
And we had to play that game on the Brandon Mayfield thing because you're talking about this bombing that killed hundreds. It was terrible. Anybody who was around then and remembers the scenes from the train bombings in Spain, it's exactly what you would expect when bombs blow up on a train. It wasn't cool.
No.
So how do you adequately, it was terrible. How do you adequately describe the situation that this case revolves around while not getting completely destroyed because you do depend on that revenue to make the next videos. Like, you have to have this revenue to keep making videos. I think we learned a lot from the first one about how to present different topics and have worked that in such a way that we don't violate those guidelines. But that is really a tough thing, I think, in the crime related genres, because there are several subgenres that YouTube people have a tough time with. How do you adequately describe certain crimes and still not have your video flagged? Or, I mean, best case scenario of getting hit is still limited monetization.
Oh, and the limited monetization is basically no monetization. Like, let's be clear about that. When people talk about, oh, it's not demonetized, it's limited, it's like, there's not ads running on it, basically. And, when they are, they're not exactly lucrative ads. So it's basically, you're taking a loss on that video when that happens. You just are. You're taking like a literal financial loss. So, and you're right, because how do you describe a thing without using the words required to describe it?
That's right. Yes.
Because that's what it comes down to, is changing the words so that YouTube doesn't pick up those bad words that you're saying, which is like terrorism and infant fatality or whatever got us flagged on the Sally Clark one. But so far that's the only one that has been flagged. That's
a tightrope, though, with this content.
It's part of the equation.
It's part of the equation. It is. And I'm sure there's going to be a topic that would be amazing to make a video about, and it really can't happen. We can't find a way. There's actually one that I can think of that I can't even describe here because it would probably get this podcast flagged. But generally, no, we can figure out a way on something. Jeff says, you guys are honestly the best. Well, that's awesome to hear. And people like Jeff, who have been around for a while, are going to see all the old videos they like in the new videos. And the one that we're working on now relies pretty heavily on some of the classics. And that's something that I like. I really like seeing. That might be my favorite part of this new track. Baseweight says as well, introducing concepts from previous videos, that being great. Well, that's part of the game here, is a video that existing subscribers who have stuck around for a while and like the content, they get a nod that way. They get a reference. It's like, it was useful for you to watch in 2017. Here's how it's paying off for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it helps explain things to people seeing it for the first time. And that blend of hitting old people and new people it's really nice. It's really nice. And it's so much nicer than in previous years where it's, sustaining people who expect a certain thing. Like, no, you can do something really good and make two different kinds of people happy. And thankfully, there's a lot of content to draw from where we can match concepts to videos, especially those ones, Kevin, that you put in hundreds of hours into reading about and making back in the day.
Yeah, hundreds of hours into each one. Each one was about 600 hours to make those. So yeah, it is nice to be able to reference those now and say, hey, I spent 15 minutes in explaining the scapegoat mechanism to you, and here's why that's relevant in this case, or whatever. That's great. That's great for me, and it's also, I think it should be hopefully exciting to people who remember those videos, or maybe they remember watching them, don't remember the information, and are excited to kind of go back and rewatch them, because there's some stuff in those videos that I don't remember very well because it's been so long. So when we were talking about like mimetic desire the other day, I was, I had a cursory amount of knowledge about it because I researched it years ago and made that video about it, but I had to go back to really hear the exact phrasing and stuff that I used to describe it, because that is very important. I mean, I spent part of what took me so long with those videos was crafting every single sentence perfectly and running it by experts. And I mean, the freaking video about Dunbar's number was vetted by Robin Dunbar.
Right.
The guy
knows.
read the script about his concept and he approved it.
Yep.
Literally. So,
yeah, there's a lot of work on those, and it continues to pay off with new angles on new content, and it's, we're not going to fully detail the next video that comes, but it's a subject that people have done very good sociology work on, very complete work about a local phenomenon, and we saw something else in it. We saw something in it that we don't think other people have seen. It builds on all of their work, but it builds on the work in those past videos too, and combines to be a mathematical look that has a hard human element, and comes out in a way that I don't think people have put those two things together in that way. So it's pretty exciting to see the old stuff come back in a new way that a completely new audience of people values. And that's what we're seeing. The stats are up on my screen all the time so that we can see what people like and what they're saying. That reminds me, Moist Critical watching your videos was a fantastic thing.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing. And I've seen people complain about this. Like, I've known people whose videos he's watched and, they're upset about it because he gets 250,000 views on a thing and nobody ever goes to watch their video. Well, that's valid to some degree. But what that got Vsauce2 is a totally separate audience commenting in real time on a video. You can replay that and watch the episode chat, or whatever they call it on YouTube, the YouTube chat, and see what people are saying about it as Charlie watches it and comments. Oh my God, do you know what a company would pay for a focus group of 5,000 people?
A lot of money. A lot
like
of money.
$10 million.
Oh gosh, a lot of money. Yeah.
So yes, you may have lost a little bit of AdSense on that happening, but you got a free $10 million focus group.
Yeah.
It was incredible to see that, to get that feedback. Oh God, it's amazing. So yeah, those new people looking at this combination of stuff, just amazing. It's the best.
It is so funny because it's one of those rare instances where it's like, hey, you got exposure though. You got paid in exposure. Oh. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I love it. That was really cool to see. I'm glad to get paid in exposure by Charlie because, as far as I'm concerned, how many of those people would have clicked on the video? How many people know that watch him watch Vsauce2? How many people that watch him have, a positive opinion of Vsauce2? Who knows?
Right.
I would venture to guess it's pretty low. So that was really exciting for me to see him watch that. All those videos. I think he's watched all of them on stream so far. All of the crime analysis ones. And he, as far as I know, he wasn't watching the like the paradox and the math game videos on stream. So that
probably not.
Kind of lends a little more credence to kind of the argument that I think we were making earlier about making content that is more widely approachable and less alienating and kind of sucks people in for the right reasons. And then you can kind of talk about different concepts throughout or mixed in or sprinkled in rather than it being a full conceptual video. Because that was the thing when you were talking earlier, I was thinking, gosh, it's really been like 5 years of conceptual videos that are now like weirdly seeing a payoff in these story videos.
That's significant to mention. I think so many things work this way with all creative / art / whatever. And I remember, like, I bet over a year ago, I talked about going to see a museum exhibit in 2001 about industrial design. Brooks Stevens, this was in Milwaukee. He did a lot of work with Harley Davidson, Evinrude boat motors, and kitchen appliances, and all the things that aesthetically defined the 1960s. Well, over 15 years later, I ran into a situation where somebody was looking for marketing help for a project that was about classic trains. Well, I knew about Brooks Stevens working on the I think it was the Hiawatha train. I mean, I remembered this specifically. I made a good buck off that and had a great time doing it. Well, 15 years before, I never could have guessed that spending a couple hours at a museum exhibit would actually earn me real money down the line.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how this stuff works. You do things that you think are good, and then you just kind of relax and see how it plays out and see how you can use it. And maybe it shows up 5 years later, like it has with your videos, and maybe it's 15, or maybe it never does. And then the worst thing that's happened is you had a nice time at a museum exhibit. Like what's the downside here?
Yeah. I think that's our big takeaway. So yeah, I'm excited that people are interested in the new content. I'm definitely really excited about it as well. And I hope that this little discussion has sort of, formed in your mind what I've been thinking about it, the way that Matt has thought about it. And ultimately that I do think for the most part that we're now seeing, it's weird to say, but the fruits of the labor of all of those years of discussing concepts, now we're able to tell stories in which they play a major role. And that probably would have been impossible without doing that groundwork first. And it was an accident. This wasn't planned. This wasn't like, oh yes, here is my 5-year plan. Year 1, I will do a series of videos on human nature. Like, no, that's, you can't do that.
Somehow Donald Trump just grew up on Staten Island.
I was thinking I was like one of the Kennedys. I was like some sort of like,
that's even better.
Long lost Kennedy from
Nantucket Morty is the name of that character.
I was going to say from Paducah, Kentucky.
Paducah?
Paducah, Kentucky, Kennedy. Oh my gosh. But that's the other thing. There's no long-term like forecasting. I don't have a crystal ball. You do stuff, you figure it out, and you adapt along the way. And
be comfortable with that, because that's the way it works.
That's the way it works. Speaking of works, we're out of here. I have work to do on this whole Vsauce2 thing. Thanks to everybody for hanging out with us. We will be back Tuesday for TC Use Days with Brendan Caulfield talking about the music of Smiling Friends. And listen, you have homework. You have to watch all of Smiling Friends because there's going to be a lot of deep discussion. If you haven't already, check it out. It's on Adult Swim. You can stream it on Adult Swim if you have some sort of cable provider. And I'm sure you can find other more nefarious ways of finding it. But ultimately, it's also coming out on HBO Max in February.
That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if that's public information or I just accidentally leaked that, but
I think Ben mentioned it to me actually the other day.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah. So I think people know. Yeah.
Yeah. So in February, you'll be able to watch it in all of its glory on HBO Max. But until then, try to check out Smiling Friends because we have 2 weeks straight of Smiling Friends discussions and then a whole host of awesome guests after that. So we're out of here. Thanks to all of our patrons. We'll see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% goes directly to keeping episodes going every week. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Jen Mafasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Risebread, Sean Malone, Triple Question Mark, Ryan, Kamikaze, Maria, Marco, Sheep, Tom Videogre, Jelksies, and Dan the Latch. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders. Linus and Trev's Dead, Boromir, Bot Dogs, Chinchilla, Isaac, Conrad, James, Andrew, Jeff Davis, Patrick Pister, Baseweight, Monahim, Dojangles, and Zero. Again, you are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster and producer Dan Yosua. And thanks to Baseweight for use of the Created in the Unknown song for our opening theme, and to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.